Money on my mind, money on my mind. Luister, it's a pleasure to have a man on the show that, it's no longer, he never was a cow like the rest of us.
No, he was never a cow.
Vusi Thembekwayo is with us this morning. And you were here before, but I wasn't here.
Yeah, that's right. You had an off day, I think.
I was in Santa Fe.
He was overseas.
You were in Santa Fe.
But not for business, unfortunately. Listen, this man has gone viral. We were just talking about it. He was talking about radical economic transformation. This then immediately went viral because apparently no one knows what the hell it is except Vusi Thembekwayo. Listen, just to remind us again now, if some of them are listening, the Tuli House tuned in every morning. Please explain to everyone what is radical economic transformation.
Wow. So, I can't believe you just went into it. There's
like that.
No warm-up, no.
I did the whole stables thing and everything.
My view is that we need to start first with the basics. So, maybe just to give you a bit of context, Rian, one of the things we did in this country just after, and this is not, one of the things we did in this country just after 96, after we passed the laws around black economic empowerment, which is a necessary and I fully support piece of legislation, was in the transfer of share equity, which went predominantly to politically connected people. We created a class of capital, a capitalist class of people who own 26% of companies that they hadn't played a role in building, either as employees or as owners and shareholders. So as a result, you created a narrative of instant gratification.
Yeah, quick wealth.
Right, which was not the intended consequence, and I fully appreciate that. But what's happened since is it's now hard to find, it's more difficult to find people who are competent, able, and are willing to take the long-term view in building businesses. So my view was, and it continues to be, that rather than go through that process again, what we need to do is to focus on a more long-term sustainable model of building black businesses. It's what I do, is I invest and find black businesses. But my premise is that we've got to start first with the basics, right? Yeah. So my view was, I'll give you an example. I come from a township called Wattville in Benoni. Right next door to it is another township called Actonville. Actonville is predominantly an Indian area, particularly Muslim Indians, and Wattville is predominantly black African. Wattville has probably about 8 times the population of Actonville, but Actonville has a multiple the wealth of Wattville. The question is why, right? And the real answer to that is because in the predominantly Indian area, the Indians started franchises or businesses with a premise of understanding what real wealth was. Real wealth is ownership, right? So they would start a bit. So the grandfather, for instance, would start a hardware store, and then a generation later, he would leave the hardware store to his son, who would augment it with a fast food joint next door. A generation later, which would be the current generation, the son and the father have now left the current son or the daughter, say, another business which might be a dry cleaner, right? So you 3 generations down, 3 generations in, 3 generations of cash flow generation, and 3 generations of businesses in. Now, I don't argue, and nobody can, that we come from a past in this country where it was frankly illegal for black people to own businesses. My grandfather, for instance, started a spaza shop in 1974, 3 years before Whitey Basson started ShopRite. Greatest of respect for Whitey Basson, but the only difference between Whitey and my father was Whitey was the right skin color. Or my grandfather was
a
the right
Whitey
skin color. Exactly. That said, I don't want to take 26% of Whitey's company because I don't think that's all I'm capable of. I think I'm capable of creating another ShopRite.
Amen. I love that.
At the heart of it is, so if you want to fix black entrepreneurship, fix entrepreneurship. The black part will emerge.
Ooh, well said.
Sure.
721. You're just like a quotable man. And he looks so good in his beautiful jacket. Vusi Thembekwayo, people love you, man. Just seeing all those likes coming through. Global business speaker and entrepreneur. Listen, you put it very eloquently. You were talking about boxes that people need to tick. If you're an entrepreneur, these are the boxes you need to tick if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Right. You want to know what the boxes are?
Asseblief.
So the first box I'd say is know your product better than anybody else. The second box is make sure that you understand the commercial part of your business better than anybody else, because once you know that there is a gap in the market, you've got to make sure there's a market in the gap. So many people will find the gap and then just go and then don't think about, but can I monetize this thing sustainably? And the third part, and this is important, is make sure that you can do this thing and be competitive regardless of any other extenuating factors or circumstances. So you shouldn't do it because you are a female or because you are black or because you are in South Africa. You should do it because you're good and you're the best.
Love it.
Business.
Now, I want to just get to a point here, because at some point we both were on similar journeys at some point, and then you just skyrocketed and I sort of went in another direction. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. We both had a passion for public speaking.
Right.
I ended up sitting behind a microphone. You ended up being a multimillionaire. So now I'm just trying to see where things went wrong for me. So at some point you were a public speaker, and then what?
Yeah, I mean, so I understood fairly early on that public speaking is probably the single most important leadership tenet.
Yeah.
Think about any leader that has influenced direction and has not been good at public speaking. The second thing I understood was that public speaking gave me huge exposure to some of the world's most powerful people. What I needed to figure out was, how do I exploit that exposure for beneficial use for me and for them? So once I'd worked that out, then it just became about, so what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? And how do you use this thing called public speaking to enable you? So starting my venture capital fund, for instance, for me was easy, because once I did, I had a Rolodex of some of the world's most influential people that I could get on the phone with, who trusted me and who trusted that I would do the job, because when they pulled me in as a public speaker, I delivered. I just want to make a quick point, Rand, because this is important. Never take for granted the small beginnings, and be very good. If you're a cleaner, be the best at it. Like if you're a receptionist, kill it at your job. Because what happens when you deliver small things is you give people credibility, equity to trust you with the bigger things. Most people go, well, I'm going to be mediocre at this because I'm busy working towards the other thing. Don't do that. The other thing is a result of the small things you do.
Come on.
Just if you start small, and if you're good at the small, the big things come naturally.
Luister, Vusi Thembekwayo says he's started another business now.